Really? You came here to try to steal my date? What kind of person does that? Hannah felt her face heat up. She had made an honest mistake, and this woman was acting like she had planned some elaborate scheme. Steal? I mixed up the tables, okay? It happens. Relax. Your Prince Charming is still available. The silence in the Rosewood Bistro was so heavy that Hannah could hear the faint buzz of the coffee machine in the back. Every pair of eyes was fixed on the corner table, where the most awkward triangle in blind date history had formed. The woman in high heels and perfect posture looked Hannah up and down with an expression mixing indignation and superiority. But that was just the beginning. Because in a few days, Hannah would discover that the man in the wheelchair wasn't who she thought he was. You're going to be surprised by the story. Stay with me till the end and you'll see why. But first, I have a small favor to ask. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what rating you'd give this story from 0 to 10. It really helps the channel grow. All right, let's get started. Daniel Carter adjusted the wheelchair he had borrowed for the third time that morning. He let out a deep breath, looking at his distorted reflection in the cafe window. A millionaire CEO pretending to be poor and paralyzed for a blind date. If anyone on the board found out, they would think he had lost his mind. But Daniel was tired of calculated smiles, of women who memorized the value of his company's stocks before memorizing his name, tired of being seen as a walking wallet wearing an Italian suit. This time, it would be different. Or disastrous. Probably both. He positioned himself at the back table near the window, exactly as arranged. The cafe was moderately busy. Daniel tapped his fingers on the wooden table, feeling his stomach twist with nerves. The cafe door swung open, making the little bell ring frantically. Hannah Hayes walked in like a burst of energy, her brown hair slightly messy, her bag hanging unevenly on her shoulder. She stopped for a second, her eyes scanning the place with urgency. She was late, very late. Back table, she murmured to herself, remembering her friend's instructions. He'll be at the back table. Her eyes found Daniel, alone at the last table near the window. There. That was him. Hannah crossed the cafe in quick steps, her expression shifting into a wide smile. She pulled out the chair without hesitation and sat down, dropping her back on the floor with a dramatic sigh. "Sorry I'm late," Hannah began, running her hands through her hair in an impossible attempt to fix it. "You won't believe the morning I had. First, my sister decided today was the perfect day to try making pancakes by herself. Pancakes! The kitchen turned into a war zone. There was flour even on the ceiling, I swear. Then, when I finally managed to leave the house, the bus simply didn't show up. It just disappeared. I waited 20 minutes until I realized the bus company had a holiday today. Who gives buses a holiday? People always need transportation." Daniel blinked, trying to keep up with the whirlwind of words. He opened his mouth to introduce himself, but Hannah was already continuing. "So I took a cab, but the driver was convinced he knew a shortcut. A shortcut. We went around the whole city. I ended up paying double and still arrived late." She finally paused, took a deep breath, and extended her hand. "But I'm here now, ready to talk about this extra weekend job." "Job?" Daniel frowned slightly, but shook her hand. Hannah's palm was warm, her grip firm and sincere. He tried to speak, but Hannah interrupted again, leaning forward with her elbows on the table. "You seem like a good person. You know, my friend said you were reliable, but we never know, right? The other day, she recommended a waitress job for me at a wedding. And when I got there, I realized it was actually for me to serve food dressed as a flamingo. A flamingo! Who thinks of these things?" Daniel felt his lips turn into an involuntary smile. There was something absolutely magnetic about this woman. The way her hands moved animatedly while she spoke, the way her eyes lit up with every absurd story. "That sounds interesting," he managed to say when Hannah paused to drink a sip of water from the glass the waiter had brought. Interesting is a polite way to say strange. Hannah laughed, and the sound filled something inside Daniel's chest he didn't even know was empty. But what can we do, right? Work is work. Speaking of that, this job you have for me, it's something normal, right? No animal costumes or juggling performances. No, no costumes, Daniel replied, already caught up in the misunderstanding without realizing it. He assumed she was nervous, testing him. Maybe that was just how she handled blind dates. He found it charming. Great, because my coordination is terrible. The other day, I dropped 3 plates at the restaurant. 3 at the same time. My boss almost had a heart attack. Hannah laughed at herself, shaking her head. But hey, at least I can do the basics well. I'm punctual, except today, but you saw the reasons. I'm responsible, and I learn fast. Daniel was completely fascinated. It had been years since someone talked to him like that, with no hidden motives, no calculating looks measuring the value of his watch. Hannah talked to him as if he were a normal person. The minutes passed like seconds. They talked about everything and nothing. Hannah told hilarious stories from the restaurant, and Daniel laughed in a way he had not laughed in years. For a moment, he forgot about the wheelchair, forgot about the lie, forgot who he truly was. Until the cafe door opened again. A tall woman, perfectly dressed, walked in with a look of someone searching for someone. Her eyes found Daniel, then Hannah, and her expression closed instantly. "Daniel, right?" she asked, her cold voice cutting through the air as she moved straight toward the table. Daniel's blood froze. Hannah blinked, confused, looking between the two. "Right? I thought you were... Who was this woman at my table?" The newcomer demanded, arms crossed. Realization hit Hannah like a bucket of cold water. Wrong table, wrong man. She had sat at the wrong table. Oh my God. Hannah stood up quickly, her face burning. "I thought you were..." Daniel understood everything in that moment, too. Hannah was not his blind date. She had mixed up the tables, and he had mixed up everything, too. The whole cafe seemed to have stopped to watch. The silence that followed was broken only by the uncomfortable shuffling of feet and the distant clinking of cups. Hannah's face was burning with a mix of embarrassment and indignation as the perfectly dressed woman continued her assault. "Really? You came here to try to steal my date? What kind of person does that?" Hannah felt anger replace embarrassment. She had made an honest mistake, and this woman was treating her like a criminal. "Steal? Ma'am, if I wanted to steal anything, it definitely wouldn't be a blind date in a cafe with weak Wi-Fi and reheated coffee. I mixed up the tables, okay? It happens. Relax. Your Prince Charming is still available." Some customers laughed quietly. The woman turned red. "You are extremely rude. Daniel, are you gonna let this intruder talk to me like that?" Daniel looked between the two women, completely lost about what to do. Part of him knew he should apologize and try to save the planned date, but the other part, the bigger, more honest part, could not stop admiring the way Hannah defended herself with humor and dignity. "An intruder?" Hannah let out an incredulous laugh. "Look, I understand that you're upset, but you don't have to treat me as if I broke into the White House. It was a misunderstanding. I came here for a work meeting, saw a man alone at the back table, and assumed he was the person I was looking for. That's all. No conspiracy, no hidden intention, just a tired woman who mixed up a table." The woman narrowed her eyes. "Work meeting? You expect me to believe that?" "Frankly, I don't care if you believe it or not." Hannah picked up her bag from the floor with a firm movement. "But let me give you some free advice. If you keep treating people this way, you'll end up with many canceled dates." "Good luck with your life, ma'am. You'll need it." Hannah turned to Daniel, and for a moment their eyes met. There was something there, a strange connection, an unexplained chemistry that had appeared during those minutes of confused conversation. "It was a pleasure meeting you, even by mistake," Hannah said with a genuine smile. "Sorry for the confusion." She began to walk away, but Daniel found himself doing something completely impulsive. "Wait!" he called, pushing the wheelchair toward her. Hannah stopped, surprised. The other woman stood speechless. "Oliver, what are you doing?" But Daniel was no longer listening. For the first time in years, he was doing something he truly wanted, not something he was supposed to do. "You're right," he said to the woman from the date, keeping his tone polite but firm. "There was a misunderstanding, and I would rather keep talking to Hannah, if she doesn't mind." The whole cafe let out a collective gasp. Someone even applauded. The woman grabbed her purse in a sharp, offended motion, her face red with indignation. "This is ridiculous. You're choosing that strange girl, instead of me?" "I am," Daniel replied simply. She walked out with heavy steps, slamming the door behind her. The little bell jingled in a way that was almost comical. Hannah looked at Daniel, a mix of surprise and amusement on her face. "You just sent your date away because of me. Wow. I hope you don't regret that when you find out I'm really a walking disaster." Daniel laughed. "I think I'll take the risk. Want to go to that park nearby, away from all the curious eyes?" Hannah glanced around the cafe, where almost all the customers were still staring at them with interest. "Good idea. Let's go before someone takes a picture and this turns into a meme." A few minutes later, they were sitting on a bench in the nearby park. It was a simple place, with old trees offering generous shade and children running after pigeons. Daniel had positioned the wheelchair next to the bench where Hannah sat.
"So," Hannah began, looking at him with genuine curiosity, "tell me something. Why would someone like you go on a blind date? You seem, I don't know, polite, interesting. Surely you don't need help meeting people." Daniel felt the weight of the lie on his shoulders. "Sometimes it's hard to meet real people. People who see you for who you are, not for other things." "I get it," Hannah nodded thoughtfully. "It's like when people find out you've got some money saved and suddenly everyone wants to be your best friend." Daniel almost laughed at the irony. If only she knew. "Something like that. And you, what's your story?" Hannah sighed, stretching her legs out. "My story is simple and complicated at the same time. I work mornings at the Rosewood Bistro, and I take the afternoon shift too when they need me. And on weekends, I take any job I can find. Serving at events, delivering orders. One time, I even worked as a clown at a kids' party. Don't ask, it was traumatic for everyone involved." Daniel laughed, imagining the scene. "I support my younger sister, Sophie. She's 15, and the reason I do all of this is our mom passed away 3 years ago, and before she left, she made me promise I would take care of Sophie, give her the chances we never had. So that's what I do. I work until I drop, save every penny, and make sure that girl has everything she needs." Her voice was firm, but Daniel could hear the exhaustion beneath the determination. "That's amazing," he said sincerely. "You must be exhausted all the time." "Oh, exhausted is my natural state now," Hannah joked, "but it's worth it. Sophie is smart, funny, and has a bright future ahead. I just need to make sure she gets there." "And your dreams?" Daniel asked. "What do you want for yourself?" Hannah stayed silent for a moment, watching the children in the park. "Honestly, right now my dream is paying the rent on time and maybe someday having a day off where I can sleep in without feeling guilty. Big dreams can wait. First, I need to secure the basics." Daniel felt his chest tighten. This woman worked nonstop, sacrificed everything for someone she loved, and still kept her humor and lightness. It was something he rarely saw in his world of executives and board meetings. "You're amazing, Hannah," he said softly. Hannah looked at him, surprised, then smiled. "You're not bad either, mysterious guy who hasn't really told me what he does for a living." "I work with technology," Daniel answered, which wasn't exactly a lie. Nothing too exciting. "Everyone says that until I find out they programmed space rockets or something," Hannah joked. They talked for more than an hour, losing track of time. Daniel couldn't remember the last time he had felt so comfortable with someone. Hannah had a way of seeing the world that was both practical and hopeful, and her humor made even her hardest stories feel lighter. When they finally said goodbye, they exchanged phone numbers. It was strange, but it was nice, Hannah said with a smile. Thanks for choosing to talk to me instead of going after Miss High Heels. Best decision I've ever made, Daniel replied, and it was true. But as Hannah rode the bus home, reality was waiting. When she got off at the stop near her building, stuck to the door of her apartment was a yellow paper, an eviction notice. Hannah felt her stomach twist. She tore the paper from the door quickly, folded it, and slipped it into her pocket before any neighbor could see it. Inside the apartment, she found Sophie in the living room doing homework. "Hi, how was the work meeting?" Sophie asked, looking up with a smile. "It was interesting." Hannah forced a smile, hiding the tension. "I'm going to make dinner." In the kitchen, while she prepared pasta, the cheapest and easiest meal they had, Hannah took the paper out of her pocket and read it again. 3 months late. 15 days to move out or settle the debt. She did the math in her head. What she earned barely covered basic expenses and Sophie's school. There was nothing left to cut. They were already living with the bare minimum. She needed more work. Fast. The following days brought an unexpected routine for Hannah. Between shifts at the restaurant and looking for extra jobs, there was Daniel. They had started meeting whenever possible, usually late in the afternoon when Hannah had 1 or 2 free hours before her night shift.
Their first meeting after the park was at a cheap ice cream shop near the restaurant. Hannah ordered the most affordable flavor and laughed when Daniel did the same. "You know you can choose 2 flavors for the same price, right?" She pointed to the menu. "But you only ordered 1, Daniel replied, matching her smile. "Let me tell you about my day. You're going to laugh. There was a customer today who swore he ordered ribs, but when I brought him, he said he asked for chicken. Fine, I took it back. Then he complained the chicken was dry. I brought another one. Then he said he actually wanted fish. Fish! In the end, do you know what he ate? A salad. A simple salad that wasn't even on the original order." Daniel laughed so hard he almost dropped his ice cream. "Was he testing you?" "I think he was testing my patience, and spoiler, I almost failed." Hannah rolled her eyes dramatically. "But then he left a generous tip, so I forgive the 5 trips I made to the kitchen." On their next meeting, they walked through a flea market. Daniel pushed the wheelchair with ease, and Hannah commented on every stall with sharp humor. "Look at that lamp." She pointed at an object that looked like it had survived several decades. "I bet if you turn it on, it opens a portal to the 70s. It probably comes with disco music and bell-bottom pants." "You have an amazing imagination," Daniel said, impressed. "That's what happens when you can't afford Netflix. We make up our own stories," Hannah joked. But there was a truth there that Daniel understood. On their third meeting, they were sitting on a bench by a small lake. Hannah was talking about a kitchen disaster at the restaurant where the chef had confused salt with sugar in an entire sauce. People were eating and making that face like they were trying to be polite, but you could see in their eyes that something was very wrong. Hannah gestured animatedly. Until someone finally said the sauce was sweeter than a birthday cake. The chef turned red, tasted it, and almost fainted. "We had to redo everything. It was crazy." Daniel laughed, but he was also paying attention. Over the past few days, he had started to notice things about Hannah. The way she always checked prices before ordering anything. How her clothes were simple, but always clean and well taken care of. How she never complained about being tired, even though sometimes he caught a yawn slipping out when she thought he wasn't looking. And Hannah was noticing things about Daniel as well. His posture was strangely elegant for someone who supposedly had few resources. His vocabulary was rich and precise. He knew cultural references she had only heard about. "You're a bit mysterious, you know," Hannah said one day while they shared a sandwich in a cheap diner. Daniel almost choked. "Mysterious? Me?" "Yes. There's something about you that doesn't add up. Like a puzzle where some pieces seem to belong to a different set." Hannah studied him with curiosity. "But it's fine. Everyone has their secrets." Daniel felt the weight of guilt grow heavier
Each day that passed, it became harder to keep the lie. He wanted to tell the truth, wanted to remove that artificial distance he had created. But the fear was stronger. Hannah was the first person in years who saw him as a real human being, not as a walking bank. How would she react when she discovered who he really was? Hannah, meanwhile, carried her own burden in silence. The eviction notice burned in her mind constantly. 10 days left, 9 days, 8. She had looked for jobs every free moment she had, but nothing came up. At night, when Sophie slept, Hannah stayed awake doing numbers that never worked out. But during the day with Daniel, she allowed herself to forget for a few hours. She allowed herself to laugh, relax, feel light. "Have you ever stopped to think," Hannah began one day while they waited for their orders in a small diner, "how the world is absurdly unfair?" Daniel looked at her, surprised by the shift in tone. "Like, there are people out there who spend more on a purse than I make in 3 months. People who never had to choose between paying the electric bill or buying food. Who live in huge bubbles, completely disconnected from the reality most people live in." Hannah stirred her soda with a straw, thoughtful. "And I'm not angry at those people, you know. I just think it's sad that many of them don't even notice. They live their lives thinking everyone has the same opportunities, that you just have to work hard and everything works out. But that's not how it works." Daniel felt each word like an arrow. He was exactly the type of person Hannah was describing. Until a few weeks ago, he had never stopped to really think about how much an electric bill cost or what it meant to choose between basic needs. "You're right," he said softly. "It is unfair. But what can we do, right?" Hannah sighed, then smiled. "We do the best we can with what we have, and maybe someday things will get better. I believe that. I have to believe it. Otherwise, there's no way to keep going." Daniel admired her strength. Even carrying so much, even fighting every day, Hannah had not lost her hope or her humor. She was, without a doubt, the most incredible person he had ever met. "You're extraordinary, Hannah," he said, his eyes fixed on her. Hannah laughed, embarrassed. "You really need to meet better people if you think I'm extraordinary. I'm just a clumsy waitress trying to survive." "You're much more than that." There was something in Daniel's voice that made Hannah stop and look at him for real. For a moment, the world around them seemed to slow down. She felt something move in her chest, something warm and frightening at the same time. "Daniel, she began, but was interrupted by the shrill sound of her phone. It was an unknown number. Hannah answered, frowning. "Hello?" "Miss Hayes, this is Central High School office. We're calling about your sister, Sophie." Hannah's heart raced. "What happened? Is she okay?" "Physically, she's fine, but there was an incident. Sophie has been suspended for 3 days. We need you to come to the school immediately for a meeting with the principal." Hannah felt the world spin. Sophie had never gotten into trouble. Never. She was a great student, responsible, never gave any reason for concern. "Yes, of course. I'll be there in 20 minutes." She hung up the phone with trembling hands. Sophie had never gotten into trouble. Never. What could have happened? "What happened?" Daniel asked, worried. "My sister was suspended. I need to go to the school now." Hannah was already standing, grabbing her bag with quick and nervous movements. "I'm going with you," Daniel said, already moving the chair. "You don't have to." "I want to go, please." Hannah looked at him, saw the sincerity in his eyes, and nodded. At that moment, she had no energy to argue. She only needed to get to Sophie and understand what had happened. When they arrived at Central High School, Hannah practically jumped out of the taxi. Daniel paid the driver and quickly set up his wheelchair, following Hannah, who was almost running toward the entrance. Sophie was sitting in a chair in the hallway, her eyes red and swollen from crying. When she saw Hannah, she stood up and ran to hug her. "I'm so sorry, Han. I'm really sorry." "It's all right,"
It's all right. Hannah stroked her hair even though her own heart was racing. We'll solve this. The principal, Mrs. Reynolds, a middle-aged woman with thick-framed glasses, called them into her office. Daniel waited in the hallway, but Hannah looked at him and gestured for him to come in as well. Miss Hayes, thank you for coming so quickly, the principal began, sitting behind her desk. We had a serious incident today during lunch. What exactly happened? Hannah asked, keeping her voice steady even though she was shaking inside. The principal sighed. Sophie got into a heated argument with 3 classmates. According to witnesses, the other girls were making comments about your financial situation. Hannah felt her face heat up. Sophie began to cry again. They said my clothes were from a thrift store, Sophie sniffed. They said we were poor and that I should stop pretending I had money to be in that school, that I was only here because of a scholarship and that I was taking the place of someone who really deserved it. Hannah's heart broke into 1,000 pieces, but she stayed composed. And what did you do, Sophie? I said they didn't know anything, that you work harder than their spoiled parents put together, that our situation doesn't define who I am or what I can achieve. Sophie wiped her tears. Then one of them laughed and said, you probably couldn't even pay the rent. And I lost my patience. I yelled at them. I said things I shouldn't have said. Sophie pushed one of the girls, the principal added. We have 0 tolerance for physical aggression. She pushed me first, Sophie protested. She got close to me and pushed me against the locker. The other girls deny that, the principal said, but her tone suggested she wasn't fully convinced. Hannah took a deep breath. Daniel watched fascinated as she processed everything, her expression shifting from worry to determination. Mrs. Reynolds, with all due respect, my sister has been at this school for 2 years. She has never, not once, gotten into trouble. She has excellent grades, participates in activities. She's a model student. Do these other girls have a record of exemplary behavior as well? The principal hesitated. Well, one of them's had a few warnings for bullying. So let me understand. Hannah leaned slightly forward but kept a respectful posture. My sister was provoked, possibly pushed first by girls with a history of problems, defended herself, and she's the only one being suspended? The school rules are clear, Mrs. Reynolds began, but Hannah interrupted, her voice remaining calm. The rules should protect all students equally. Sophie shouldn't have to listen to cruel comments about our situation. We didn't choose to be poor, Mrs. Reynolds. We work hard every day, and my sister deserves to be here just as much as anyone else. There was a moment of silence. The principal adjusted her glasses, clearly impressed by the way Hannah had stood her ground without losing respect or composure. You're right, the principal finally said. I will review the case. The other girls will also be called in with their parents. Sophie will still have a suspension, but it will be only 1 day, not 3, and we will introduce a discussion about respect and inclusion with the entire class. Hannah nodded, satisfied. Thank you for listening. That's all I ask. When they left the school, Sophie hugged Hannah again. You were amazing in there. You were brave for standing up for yourself. Hannah kissed the top of her sister's head. But next time, try using words instead of pushing, okay? Okay, Sophie agreed, then noticed Daniel for the first time. Hi, are you Daniel? Daniel smiled. Yes, I am. Nice to meet you, Sophie. Hannah talks about you, Sophie said, making Hannah turn red. Oh, she does? Daniel looked at Hannah with an amused smile. Just basic things, like that you exist. Nothing important, Hannah said quickly. Shall we go home? The following weeks brought a peace Hannah hadn't felt in years. With Daniel by her side, even the weight of unpaid bills seemed lighter. They continued meeting, their connection growing deeper with each conversation. One Wednesday afternoon, they met at the park where they had talked for the first time after the cafe incident. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Hannah was sitting on the bench, looking at the lake, and Daniel noticed she seemed lost in thought. A penny for your thoughts, he said gently. Hannah smiled, but it was a tired smile. My thoughts aren't worth even that. I'm just thinking about life, about how sometimes it feels like we're running on a treadmill. You work, 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 but never move forward. Are you okay? Daniel asked, worried. I am, Hannah lied, then sighed. No, I'm not, actually. But I will be. I always am. It's like my superpower, the ability to keep going even when everything is falling apart. Daniel took her hand. You don't have to be strong all the time. I do. There are people counting on me. They stayed quiet for a moment, just watching the ripples in the water. Can I tell you something? Hannah finally said, her voice lower. Of course. I'm scared. Of what? This. Us. She looked at him. It's been so long since I let anyone get close. I built these huge walls because it's easier not to feel than to risk getting hurt. But you're getting past those walls without even trying, and that terrifies me. Daniel's heart pounded. Hannah, let me finish. She gently interrupted. I like you, Daniel. A lot. In a way I didn't expect. And it's scary because I can't afford to get distracted, to fall in love, to put my heart on the line. But at the same time, when I'm with you, for the first time in a long time, I feel like, as if for a few moments, I can just be Hannah. Not the provider, not the responsible one. Just me. Daniel felt a rush of emotion so strong it almost knocked him over. Without thinking, he leaned in and kissed her. The kiss was soft, full of unspoken promises and deep feelings. When they pulled away, they were both breathless. Hannah Hayes, Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. Would you be my girlfriend? Hannah blinked, surprised, then laughed, a genuine, happy sound. You're asking me to date you? Just like that? Out of nowhere? In the middle of the park? I am. And I know it's fast, but I don't want to waste time. Life is too short not to chase what makes you happy. Hannah looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel could see the conflict in her eyes, fear battling desire. Yes, she finally said, a slow smile spreading across her face. But let's take it slow, okay? I need time to get used to this whole having someone thing. All the time you need, Daniel promised. And he almost told her everything in that moment. He almost told her about the money, the company, the wheelchair lie. But fear held him back. The fear of seeing that smile disappear. The fear of losing her. I'll always be by your side, he said instead, and felt the weight of the lie grow even heavier. But happiness is often short-lived for those who don't have the luxury of stability. The next morning, Hannah woke up early for her extra weekend shift at a department store. It was a job she had gotten a few months earlier, only on Saturdays and Sundays, but it helped increase her income. When she arrived, she found the manager at the door with a worried expression. Hannah, can we talk? 20 minutes later, Hannah was back on the street without the job. The store was making cuts, and weekend employees were the first to go. Hannah leaned against the building wall, closing her eyes. 6 days to pay the rent. One less job, and no idea how to fix it. For the first time in a long time, Hannah felt the pressure threaten to break her. But she took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and began walking. Giving up was not an option. It never had been. That evening, Daniel was in his home office. The computer screen displayed financial reports, but his eyes couldn't focus on the numbers. His mind was completely occupied with Hannah. The phone rang. It was James, his best friend and the company's vice president. You disappeared, James said bluntly. You skipped 3 meetings this week. What's going on? Daniel rubbed his face. I met someone. Let me guess. You're still pretending to be poor and in a wheelchair? It's complicated, James. It's a lie, Daniel. That's what it is. James sighed on the other end. Look, I get why you started this. I really do. But secrets have an expiration date. And the longer you let this go, the worse the fallout will be. I know. She's different, James. She's real. And I'm afraid that if she finds out who I am, everything will change.
So you'd rather build an entire relationship based on lies? Daniel had no answer for that. The following week, Daniel and Hannah kept meeting whenever they could. Daniel noticed that Hannah seemed more tired, more tense, even though she tried to hide it. He wanted so badly to help her, to take that weight off her shoulders, but he knew she would refuse. And each day, the lie grew heavier. One day, Daniel was walking through the city when he noticed a man on the other side of the street with a large camera. The man was looking right at him, and when their eyes met, the photographer lifted the camera. Flash. Daniel's heart stopped. He recognized the situation immediately. A paparazzi. Someone who had recognized him, and that meant his time was running out. The truth was about to come out, whether he wanted it or not. Daniel barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the flash of the camera, heard the click that marked the end of everything he had built with Hannah. At 5 a.m, he gave up trying to sleep and grabbed his phone. 3 messages from James, all with links to the same article. His stomach twisted even before opening it. "Billionaire CEO Daniel Carter of Apex Systems seen with mysterious woman," screamed the headline. The photo showed him and Hannah on the street. She was pushing the wheelchair, both of them smiling. It looked like an innocent image, but the text that came with it was devastating. After weeks away from the social scene, billionaire Apex Systems CEO Daniel Carter was photographed in an intimate moment with an unidentified woman. Sources close to him speculate about who the new companion of the city's most desired bachelor might be. Daniel threw the phone onto the sofa and covered his face with his hands. It was over. Everything was over. He needed to reach Hannah before she found out. He needed to be the one to tell her. He needed the chance to explain. He grabbed his car keys and left, completely forgetting about the wheelchair that had become part of his lie. That morning, Hannah arrived at the Rosewood Bistro still smiling. Diane handed her a newspaper. There was the photo of her with Daniel, but the headline revealed the truth. Billionaire CEO Daniel Carter of Apex Systems seen with mysterious woman. Hannah's hands trembled as she read. Daniel Carter, CEO, billionaire, Apex Systems. Everything had been a lie. She locked herself in the restroom, tears falling before she realized. He had lied about everything. While she shared her struggles, he had been pretending. She had fallen in love with an illusion. Hannah washed her face and returned with her head held high. Daniel was there, standing, walking, no wheelchair. Another lie. Hannah, I can explain. You're walking. That was also a lie. The other employees stopped working, watching the scene. I know how this looks, Daniel began. How does this look? A billionaire who was having fun pretending to be poor and paralyzed. Hannah's voice was frighteningly calm. You lied about who you are. You let me open my heart while you were probably laughing at me. I never wanted to hurt you. I was afraid that if you knew who I was, you wouldn't see me as a person anymore. So you tested me? You had no right to do that to me. What I felt for you was never a lie, Daniel said, his voice breaking. But you did hurt me, Hannah shouted, tears streaming. You made a fool out of me. I trusted you. You had so many chances to tell the truth. Yesterday, when you asked me to be your girlfriend, you could have been honest. Please give me a chance to fix this. You had weeks of chances, Hannah said, her voice steadying. It's over, Daniel. Whatever we had, it's over. You broke everything between us. I love you, Daniel said desperately. If you truly loved me, you would have been honest from the beginning. Goodbye, Daniel. When Hannah finally turned around, Daniel was gone.
and with him, any hope she had allowed to grow. The following days passed in a gray haze. Hannah worked mechanically, something essential inside her dimmed. Diane noticed immediately, but knew Hannah processed pain by building walls. Daniel sat in his office, doing nothing. His friend James watched with concern. "You need to go to her." "She asked me not to," Daniel replied. That night, Daniel anonymously paid Hannah's 3 months of late rent. But Hannah traced the transfer back to Apex Systems. She returned every cent with the message, "I don't need your charity. Stop trying to fix what you broke." At home, Sophie watched Hannah with growing concern. Her sister had become functional, but empty. The glow from recent weeks had completely disappeared. "Han, do you want to talk about what happened?" Sophie tried. "There's nothing to talk about. Things didn't work out." That night, Sophie texted Daniel. "Mr. Carter, this is Sophie. I can't keep watching my sister like this. She's breaking inside. She needs you, even if she'll never admit it. Please don't give up on her. She deserves to be happy, and she was happy with you." Daniel replied after a few minutes. "Thank you, Sophie, but I hurt her deeply. I don't know if she'll want to hear me." "Then make her want to. Prove what you had was real. My sister is stubborn and proud, but her heart is good. She just needs to know she can trust you." Sophie hung up and looked toward Hannah's bedroom. She had done her part. Now she could only hope Daniel would find a way to fix what had been broken. The next day, Daniel sat on the sidewalk in front of Hannah's building. He didn't knock or call. He just sat there and waited. Hours passed. Night fell. He remained. Sophie noticed him first. "Han, there's someone on the sidewalk. I think it's Daniel." Hannah shut the curtains. "He'll get tired and leave." But at midnight, Daniel was still there. Hannah couldn't take it anymore. She walked downstairs. "Don't you understand when someone tells you to go away?" "I understand," Daniel replied, "but I can't leave without trying." "5 minutes," she said finally. Daniel told her about his past, about women who pretended to love him but only wanted money, about closing himself off. "When I met you, you treated me like a normal person. For the first time in years, I felt seen. So I was afraid that if you knew the truth, everything would change. The more I knew you, the more I loved you, and the more I feared losing you. But you lost me anyway because you chose the lie." "I know, and I'll regret that forever. I'm only asking for a chance to start over, for real this time. No lies, no masks." Hannah felt her defenses crack. "I still feel something for you. I don't know if it's love or just what's left, but it's there." "Then give me a chance." "Let's talk. No lies this time." They sat on the steps and talked for real. Daniel told her about his childhood and loneliness. Hannah told him about her mother and taking responsibility for Sophie. "Sophie isn't my biological sister," Hannah revealed. "Different fathers. My mom made me promise I'd never let her father take her." Heavy footsteps interrupted them. A man walked up. "Hannah, long time?" Hannah's blood ran cold. "Marcus." "I came to get my daughter." Hannah jumped up, positioning herself between Marcus and the building entrance. "You're not getting anywhere near her." "She's my daughter. I have a right." "A right?" Hannah's voice was sharp. "You disappeared for 3 years. You didn't call, didn't send a cent, and now you show up talking about rights?" "People change." "How convenient. You got a new job and suddenly an abandoned child doesn't look good? Marcus, you never wanted to be a father." "I'm filing for custody. I have lawyers and resources." "A child should be where she's loved, and you never did that." Marcus looked at Daniel. "Your rich boyfriend?" Before Daniel could answer, Hannah laughed without humor. "Funny you mentioned money, considering that's exactly what you're after." "See you in court," Marcus said, leaving. Hannah sank onto the steps, trembling. "I can't lose her.
I promised my mother. You're not going to lose her, Daniel said. I have the best lawyers. They'll help you, but you're in control. You fight this your way. Hannah agreed. In the following days, Hannah met with Daniel's legal team. At the hearing, Marcus's lawyer spoke about his changes and financial stability. Then Hannah stood. Your Honor, I don't have wealth, but I have 3 years of sleepless nights when Sophie was sick. I have school meetings where I was the only one there. I have love and dedication. She turned to Marcus. You say you've changed, but where were you when Sophie needed a father? Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. I showed up every day for 3 years. The judge ruled. Custody remains with Hannah Hayes. Outside, Daniel was waiting. We won, Hannah said, her smile genuine. Thank you for helping me without trying to save me. You saved yourself. I was just here to watch. Hannah looked at him honestly. Daniel, I need time to process all of this. I need to be sure of what I'm feeling. I understand. I'll wait as long as necessary. 2 weeks later, Daniel sent a simple message. Coffee tomorrow? They met at the cheap ice cream shop. There was lightness in the air that hadn't been there before. No more lies, no more secrets. The dates continued. They walked, talked, laughed. 1 month later, Hannah visited Apex Systems. She was impressed not by the building, but by seeing Daniel in action. He greeted employees by name, listened to them, cared. He's a good boss, an employee told her. He really cares. That afternoon in his office, Hannah said, I think you're the same person I met at that cafe. Rich or poor, your essence is the same. I just needed to see that with my own eyes. Daniel held her face gently. I promise I'll never hide anything from you again. I know, Hannah smiled. And if you do, I'll drag you into court again. They laughed and kissed. One afternoon, Daniel sent a message. Meet me tomorrow at 3. I have a surprise. Hannah followed his instructions to the cafe where everything started. Inside, it was transformed. Flowers, candles, photos of their moments together on the walls. Daniel stood in the middle, nervous. It's the place where I met you, where I started our story with a lie. So I thought we should come back and start again, the right way. He knelt down. Hannah Hayes, you're the most incredible person I've ever met. You're strong, funny, kind. I messed up once and you gave me a second chance. I want to be your partner, your best friend. He pulled out a ring. Will you marry me? Not because I have money, but because I love you, because you make my days better, because I can't imagine my life without you. Hannah was crying and laughing. Did you rehearse that? 20 times. Was it terrible? It was perfect, Hannah pulled him up. Yes, I want to marry you. 2 months later, the wedding day arrived, small and intimate, an outdoor garden with yellow and white flowers. Hannah wore a simple, flowing white dress. Sophie helped to get ready. You look beautiful. Mom would be so proud. I wouldn't have made it here without you. The music began. Sophie and Hannah walked down the aisle together. Daniel waited at the altar with tears and the biggest smile. When they reached him, Daniel took Hannah's hands, both trembling with emotion. Hannah, I promise to always be honest. I promise to support you without controlling you. I promise to make you laugh. I promise to be your partner. And I promise to love you with everything I am. Hannah wiped her tears. Daniel, you taught me it's possible to start over. I promise to trust you. I promise to share my fears and joys. I promise to be your best friend and greatest supporter. And I promise to love you with patience, respect, and honesty. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. They kissed while everyone applauded. It was a kiss full of promises, of shared futures, of love built on truth. At the reception, speeches were made, tears were shed, laughter filled the air. But the best moment was the first dance.
Daniel and Hannah moved awkwardly. Daniel stepped on her foot. Ow, are you trying to make me limp at my own wedding? Sorry, dancing isn't my strength. They laughed, stumbled, and laughed more. The guests watched with smiles. Not a perfect couple, but a real one, with flaws and genuine love. Hey, Daniel said softly. Thank you. For what? For giving me a second chance. For teaching me. For being you. Hannah rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you for waiting. For not giving up. For showing me it's worth trusting. They kept dancing, clumsy but happy, surrounded by love. No more lies, no more masks, just Daniel and Hannah, two imperfect people who chose to love each other honestly. As they danced under the stars, both knew they had found exactly what they were looking for. Not a perfect fairy tale, but something better, something real. Sometimes life hides its greatest rewards behind the hardest moments. And those who keep doing good, even when afraid, even when hurt, always end up shining the brightest. Because real love isn't about perfection. It's about truth, forgiveness, and the courage to start again. And Hannah and Daniel have found exactly that. A real love, an honest love, a love worth fighting for.